Hi, I'm Richard Mackay.
And I'm David Bolt, and you are listening to the Wrong Bias Podcast. And on today's show, we have David Corkill and Alex Marshall MBE, and we're taking a bit of a trip down memory lane, a bit of a chat about the legend of bowls himself, David Bryant, what he brought to the game, what he was like to play against. Richie will have his normal roundup. Also, part of that, we will be doing a competition that is specifically about David Bryant, sponsored by Alex Marshall Sports.
Right, mate, here we are, show number 22, Copper. That's our anniversary. Now, I'm celebrating my 24th anniversary this week, and that is a musical instrument. So I saved a few quid and I bought our lass a penny whistle.
We had our, what's 11 again? We had 11 on the show, didn't we? So what was 11? That was my anniversary this week.
Oh, I'm going to have to I'll have to have a look now.
No, divorce papers.
Divorce. 11, stale.
Stale.
No, I tell you, it's fashion, jewellery, accessories.
We're giving her one of them pretend rings out of them plastic eggs you buy out of the sweet machine.
Anyway, we also passed a milestone, mate. 10,000 downloads.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Who would have thought it since November, mate? 10,000. I think we'd have been over the moon if we were just getting 1,000, mate.
We would. It would be nice. By next November, we've got 20,000. It would be a nice little achievement. But apologies a little bit from myself for the missing a week on the podcast. A few bits and pieces going on.
I think it's a case of not wanting to record something just for the sake of it.
For the sake of it, yeah.
We'll lose listeners if we do that, and it's quality rather than quantity. I think that's the way we look at it.
It is, and I think we've got it's a bit of a poignant show, this one, isn't it? It's such a shame to lose who is probably the greatest known bowler to ever pick up a ball.
Yeah.
We lost him a few days ago, but it's been nice to have Alex and David on the show to talk about all the great things. So yeah, it should be a really, really good show.
Yeah. Now, Bowls England sent the questionnaire out about a month ago, I think, and they got 3,500 responses, which they were delighted at. From my point of view, that's about, considering we've got 100,000 bowlers around the country, 3,500. The Facebook page has 7,000 likes, so they've got 50% of that. It's still only 3.5% of the people who play the game, and if members of your own sport can't be bothered to give any feedback, it's a sad state of affairs for me. I mean, it must be. I know Bowls England will be saying, yeah, they're over the moon with the response, but I think it's pitiful, 3,500, mate.
It is, without a shadow of a doubt, of course it is. It's, this questionnaire was put in place to potentially make some pretty big decisions and changes to the game with the new CEO coming in and looking at where the sport's at. And one thing this sport is never, ever short of is people who seem to have an opinion about the way the sport should be and where it should go, and twisting and mourning and congratulating, without taking away the people who actually put some really great comments on. I would say they're far outweighed by those who complain about the way things is going. And how many times have we talked on podcasts about affiliation fees and things like that? And 3,500, there's no excuse any time really, but it's hardly like we haven't been going through a quiet patch, is it?
Well, I mean, it only takes 10, 15 minutes, you know what I mean? It's a sport that we all love, it's a sport we all play. I know Bowls England are probably, they're over the moon with it, but I bet you behind locked doors they're probably And I think that the new CEO will probably be a bit of an eye-opener for him.
I know you can't force people to do things, but
No.
there's got to be something. And we see it with our surveys that we do and we've promoted in the past. I have a talk with a lot of clubs, and in my opinion, the disability side of the sport is not promoted enough in counties right across the country, especially the north, which I talk to a lot of my clubs about. And then you put a disability survey out there and ask people, who's got a disability within your club, and you get nothing back. And like I say, how many times do we have to keep saying, if you wear a pair of glasses, it's a disability, you're short-sighted, and it's just seconds, really. But, and it's, we keep saying it all the time, they're there for a reason. They're not just there because somebody's sitting in an office and looking to fill some time. Data that comes from these things can structure a lot of the things that the sport can apply for through Sport England, blah, blah, blah.
All the funding and all that, mate, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
One request for Bowls England, if anybody listens to it, can we have a county breakdown of how many replies you got back? And that'll show us a true picture, because you had to put your county where you were from, and I think that'll give you a true picture of the country.
How many counties?
35 counties, mate.
5 into 3,500 doesn't go very far, does it?
No.
It's a crying shame, but something's got to be done to start to get, whether it's clubs have got to be a bit more proactive and get the members to do it, or I don't know what the best way to go about it is. But
it's the old saying that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. And now it's time for two of the game's leg ends to pay tribute to David Bryant.
Right then, so on today's show, this show is going to be dedicated to David Bryant, who sadly we lost from the bowls world. And we've got two great friends of the show, David Corkill, who has been on the show previously, and Alex, who's also been on and is a great supporter for our podcast. And we thought it was two fantastic people to have talk about David. Personally, I've never had the opportunity to actually see David play bowls, but I know Alex and David have. So thank you both for coming onto the podcast. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Very happy to.
So I think, like I say, I know about the man. I used to watch him on TV. We always say this. You can walk down the street now and you can talk to people about bowls, and that people used to watch back in the 80s on TV, which was Tony and David is the one that sticks out to a lot of people, because the cap and the pipe and just the aura that David Bryant seemed to have in the sport. Love to hear the experiences you had with David and what was that aura like. I always compare our sport a lot to snooker, which we did recently, and you look at the likes of Hendrys and your Davises and your Ronnie O'Sullivans, who are people talk about who's the greatest in the game. Alex, you are obviously top of the tree, and a lot of people talk about yourself in this era of what you've done in the sport. And then sadly losing David, we're seeing a lot of people who also turn around and say that David was one of the greatest players to ever pick up a ball, and there's no shadow of a doubt about that. So it'd just be great to hear your experiences. Alex, I don't know if we would start with yourself, what you knew about David, and a little bit of a discussion about the man himself.
Yeah, to be honest, David Bryant was my idol. When I used to watch when I was a young boy watching the bowls on the TV, I used to always just love watching, because the pipe always drew an attraction, to me with the cap. And I actually always thought that it was a pipe that was always lit, but seemingly, I don't know if David will be able to tell me this, but he used that for his concentration levels, I believe, the pipe. And, I was just... I was honoured to have the opportunity to play against him on a couple of occasions, not very often, but I can always remember I played against him in the Scottish Masters, the Woolwich Masters in Aberdeen, and I could not believe I got the opportunity to play with such a gentleman and one of probably the world's best ever bowler, to be honest. But it was just a privilege to be standing with the man on the rink and on the green, and I could not believe that I was getting the opportunity to play against somebody who I watched and who was my idol. The result was going to be irrespective of how I felt, but I was just so happy to get the opportunity to play against him. I think I lost on that occasion, but I just thought that would be all over, an hour and a half that, I would never forget. But David was that much of a gentleman. After the game, he would always give people the time of day. I thought it'd be a case of shaking hands, walking off the green, having a drink, maybe on your own or with maybe one of your friends, but David came up and spoke to me and says, "Would you like a drink?" And I could not believe it. And I sat with a conversation for about half an hour. And, that was the type of person that he was. He would give the time of day to anybody, whether you were the best in the world or a good international bowler or just someone who actually started the game. But yeah, you've got to take your hat off to him for what he won in the sport. It was unbelievable. I had a look at his achievements, 19 world titles to his name and many more national titles. But I was actually quite sad when I heard that he actually passed away, because he's a man that I'll never forget, purely because of the person that he was. He would give everybody the time of day, and he was just such a gentleman and a master on the bowling green.
What was what was that sort of aura like, Alex, obviously playing against David? What was it that he did that was just different to everybody else in that era?
I just think, when I watched quite a number of bowlers, he had more concentration. He was more into what he'd done on the bowling green. Where, you never really seen David Bryant looking at the left or looking to the right to see what was going on in rank 2 or rank 4. But he was always focused on what he'd done. His concentration levels were just second to none. And as I say, when I was a young kid, I always aspired to be something like David Bryant. But he had something that nobody else had. His skill, his touch, everything was just out of this world.
I always remember watching him on TV and thinking back then, the balls, I think we talked about it, David, in our podcast. I mean, the balls back then were, the bias were just completely, people wouldn't even touch them with a barge ball, a lot of the balls that you used to play with back in that era, because of the bias on them, etc. And regardless whether the greens were a little bit slower indoors or whatever it was a different game then. It was, to the game we're used to now, it is very much attack-minded. But for me, David was that first person that I ever saw, that the one ball that you would always hear the crowd go,
wow,
ooh about, was his drive. And was that, and maybe this is potentially a question for both of you, but was that drive, did it get that sort of reaction from the crowd because it was unusual to play that speed of drive in that era?
I think when it was a small sort of tournament, people would see he was going to drive and didn't react much. But if you had 4,000 or 5,000 people watching, as there were on occasions whenever I played against him, especially outdoors, it was almost like a ripple going through the crowd because he stood up to play the drive shot. And as Alex was saying, it didn't put him off. A lot of modern day players, that's Alex, a lot of modern day players are, for God's sake, give me a break here. Because there's all the noise going on and everything else. Didn't happen with David. Occasionally he might step off the mat and go again, or he'd just hold the pose for a moment or two and then it would come down. Talking about the balls are slightly different. He used a size 7. Now, Alex, in your company, who orders a size 7?
We've never ever been asked in my 15 years recently, the last 15 years, never ever been asked for a size 7. We don't even sell size 5s now.
Yep, they're mainly 3s and 4s now, to be absolutely honest with you. But you see these big cannonballs going down, and I swear to God, I have played David many, many times. I swear to God, I didn't want to measure against him ever once, because those things looked like they were about a half an inch bigger than the 4s and 5s that I was using. But I played against David the first time back in the late 70s. That's sort of aging me a little bit, but when you think about it, I was a young teenager playing for Ireland, and David was skipping for England, so I got a chance to play against him. But the first singles time was about 81, and he was just a remarkable man. But when I really got to know David was in New Zealand in 1982, after the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. There was 3 or 4 of us went down to New Zealand to play in a tournament there, and I was rooming with David, and I was 22 years of age. And there was this, as Alex was saying, and everybody knows, there's this man who is the god of bowls. And a bed beside, the 2 single beds, with the pipe beside you. And that pipe, and I'll tell you now, like, that pipe fumed all day and all night. It didn't stop. We tap on it at night before we went to bed, cleaned the state, and then that was it. But as soon as he had up breakfast, the pipe was up again, and off he went. And of course, he had a very good contract with Vulcan at that time, Vulcan Pipes. So there was a sponsorship element to it. But there was also, as also you say, Alex, it was also about concentration.
Yeah.
He used that. Some people use a cloth. You'll see that with various players. Some people use a cap. David used it, and it's been very costly to me. He definitely cost me a medal at the World Championships, indoors and out. No doubt about that. 21-20 matches, one in Cokeridge, one up in Aberdeen in the '84. I've beaten him in various matches, but he beat me in some big ones. You know, he cost me a medal at the Commonwealth Games in 1990. I had to beat him, and I was guaranteed guaranteed the final for silver gold, but he beat me, and that was it. You know, I was gone because it was so tight in those days. You didn't have the threes going through. You just had the top one played the other top one in the sections. And I'd already beaten Rob Corella. So I had to beat David in the afternoon. Green was run 20-21. Alex, you've played New Zealand. You know what it's like. It's a nightmare.
Yeah,
Wind
that's hard. Wind affected. Yeah.
And we were using balls that were going into the other rink by 8-9 feet. And he would come out with a size 7s, trundling along like something like the Spanish Armada had just put out the side of the boat. And these things just trundled along. And I thought, I'm going 3 feet outside him. But, you know, it was remarkable. It really was. But again, you know, that's when David was able to do it. And we had some brilliant times over the years, chatting and talking about bowls. Different era now. You said, David, before about trying to compare eras. I think it's impossible. I think what we can say is, in the modern era of the last 20 years, it's Alex without a shadow of a doubt. And in the eras before that, you can argue all you want between Tony and others, but the reality is David Bryant was the first professional bowler that paved the way for all of us.
Yeah.
We knew we had to match him, not even in terms of how you played the game, but in your attitude towards the game, your preparation, the way you played it. And unless you could do that, you were never going to be in that elite of 10, 20 bowlers in the world. That's why I never get into comparing eras, because the game's changed completely. Like Alex now flies up and down to Australia to play bowls. And that's a very hard thing to do, because you're moving from totally different surfaces all the time. And of course, there's indoor and outdoor and various other aspects to it. And you use different bowls for different greens. Sometimes different bowls for different rinks on the green.
Yeah.
David just used size 7. You always had about 3 sets in the back of the car. But ultimately, the big trundlers came out. And
Was David, was he ever a man for chopping and changing bowls? I don't think he would be, would he?
He did on practice.
Right, okay.
You know, there was plenty of times at places like Preston, and he would arrive in with 2 or 3 sets, and then he would decide on what set he wanted. But ultimately, they were very, very slightly different. That's all, maybe in just running, but very little difference in them. And of course, if you think, Alex, that we weren't playing on, the 18-second greens that you would play now at Cutters and Scotland and various other venues, most of the time was down to 15. So you had to have big swinging bowls really to get back, because the straight bowls just wouldn't work. There's an argument they still don't, to be truthful, even on fast greens. There's an argument. But, he would change bowls, yes, he would. His style of play was different, though. I always found that David was, because I've watched the likes of Alex and Paul Foster and Nicky Brett and all the rest, you almost know what they're going to play because you watch them so much. And you think, well, I remember him playing this shot, 3 years ago in the backhand, similar situation, similar circumstance. He'll probably try it again because he knows he can be successful. David Bryant had this awful annoying habit of playing 3 balls down one hand, getting nowhere, and then change onto the other side of his last ball and nailing the damn thing.
Toucher, yeah.
And that really, really peed me off, because you were trying to block everything down on the forehand, thinking, well, he's had 3 balls here, there's no way in, the backhand's a pig, and there he goes and changes his hand. Now, I'm not saying he did it once against me. He didn't. He did it constantly.
Maybe that's where you went wrong, David. You've not been watching what he's been doing.
Exactly, Alex. Without a shadow of a doubt. I don't doubt that for one moment. I really don't. I was in Wales. I was playing. Actually, I think I was playing against Greg Hartle in the Welsh Masters at Clonethley. Alex, a place that you just love so much. And different story, lads. Different story, Alex's enjoyment of trying to get through the Welsh Masters. I think he got into the second round once and he beat me to get there. That's how bad it was,
No. I got to the quarter final one year.
You have to look it up.
But I had to withdraw.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, you did.
I had to withdraw. I had to go to the hospital, and there was nothing wrong with me, but I had to be on the safe side. But it wasn't a great venue for me. But carry on.
He fell over because his wallet was so full and hurt his hip. Guys, don't worry about it. So I'm playing against Greg, and I go down to playing him fourth and bowl. Who's in the commentary box? David Rhys-Jones and David Bryant. Now, you know what David Bryant's voice was like. It was always a bit high, West Country. And those days, the comedy boxes were not soundproof. They really were not. And I lined up in the backhand, and all I heard was this voice coming through. Well, he's lined up in the backhand, and that it really is not the right shot to play. He really shouldn't be going near that backhand. It's a pig. He won't get this. He really should be playing the forehand with 2 yards of running. And I just stood on the mat and looked up at him, And then I turned around and played the forehand with 2 yards of running, because he knew. But he was that sort of guy. He just could fit right into exactly what you were thinking and saying to himself, this is the way to play this particular shot, especially when you really played 3 shots in the backhand.
I know this is probably I always think it's a stupid or a strange question to ask, but again, I've grown up watching snooker as well as bowls, and you look at Ronnie, and this is where I agree with you, David, about trying to compare Ronnie to Higgins or to Steve Davis. Different eras, different styles of play. Henry was probably one of the first ones who ran into the red pack and opened the packs up, because it was all cagey prior to that, and it was picking balls off. Henry was the first one to open balls up. Ronnie O'Sullivan is just a genius. He's just a natural talent. He could pick a broom shank up and knock in 100. And was David, was he a complete natural, or did he, was he somebody who had to work at his game? And I know that's why I say it's a strange question. He won multiple world titles, but there's a lot of us, you've got to work on delivery, your technical side of the game. Or was he just a complete natural from day one?
Well, probably David Rhys-Jones in many ways would know this even before I played him in the late 70s, but he was right in his pump at that time, because that's when he was winning world indoors. There was a natural talent, there had to be, but he did put the work in the green. He was out there practicing. I don't know, like Alex maybe could add to this, because I don't care how talented you are. There's various, Richard Corsi, various others that have been fantastically talented as well, the likes of Alex and Paul Foster and others, Stuart Anderson, various others. You still have to put the work in, because ultimately touch and finesse, if you've got a time off or you've got different greens, you have to work out what the difference is. And Alex would probably agree, he has to change his bowls occasionally. If you think back, Alex, to Cyprus that time, when you played there in that outside rink,
was that the Premier League?
No, it was the Cyprus whenever we played.
Oh, it was the Pearce final. Is it the Pearce final?
Yes, the Pearce final. And
yeah.
They just didn't give the two of you a chance.
No, we could not go wide enough. If you went too wide, you used to go into the side ditch, and if you came in possibly 2-3 inches off the side ditch, you finished 5 feet narrow.
Yeah, but who's going to bring 2 or 3 sets of bowls to side?
You can't. Yeah,
you can't.
Because you're limited to what luggage you can take over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas David would have had bowls available at every venue virtually, whether he was overseas or not. The manufacturer would make sure they had bowls available.
He would have them there. Yeah.
Yeah, he would adapt accordingly to whatever rig that is. And I can think back to many, many occasions when various players have had their own bowls out there. David still had to put the work in, because he had to be confident that he had the right tools for the job, and that if he lost, it wasn't because he had the wrong bowls or he didn't do the work. He just lost because on the day the guy was better.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think really that's the way it works nowadays too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know that my form's not been at my best the last 2-3 years, because obviously I've been doing some other things, as in obviously the business and going overseas and stuff. And I know that I've not been putting the same work in as what I used to do. And I did think it had an effect. I don't think I was too far off my game. But if you're not at the top of your game in these events, you simply don't win. So that's where you've got to put the extra work in to keep yourself at the top of the tree. The times I did watch David Bryant play, when he was overseas, you used to see him playing in Australia, taking 10 feet of grass, 12 feet of grass. And to do that with a wind effect as well, you've got to be pretty good. And Bryant, I thought Bryant was just immaculate at what he used to do. With the wind, his ball's taking 10 feet of green, and he always used to play very good weight. That was one thing that I used to always notice with David Bryant. His weight was always immaculate, always great weight. And you're trying to give it 10 feet of grass. That's hard to do. And that's why he was as good as what he was.
He had to throw his balls out all the time.
Yeah.
Straight balls weren't there in his day. So that's what made him, at that time, in many ways, the complete bowler. The choice of balls was minimal for a start. He only had maybe 2 or 3 sets to choose from. And the secondary aspect was of it, he didn't have to go looking for tight lines because there was no such thing. Because you had to throw the ball out. They had to throw it out in the back.
Yes.
So in many ways it was less complicated, but it made it better for the guy who was the full shilling in terms of concentration and ability to manipulate his balls. And that's what David was very, very good at. In many ways it's more complicated now because of the variations in greens and balls. But David did it indoors and outdoors. You see, that's the hard bit to me. David, he did it indoors and outdoors. We have great indoor players, fantastic indoor players. Some of them don't even play outdoors. And to get the complete bowler, in my opinion, you have to have some sort of a history of success in the outdoor as well as the indoor. That's where Alex comes into it, because it's indoor and outdoor. It's the complete bowler as opposed to just an outdoor player or an indoor player. And Bryant, in his era, for 20, 30 years, was the complete bowler.
And there'll be more from the lads in 5. Welcome to Richie's Roundup. Cue the music. The Bowls Development Alliance have appointed Lisa Graham as their new Managing Director. The BDA have followed the AIBA and Bowls England in bringing in a non-bowler as Lisa joins from British Cycling. Staying with the BDA, and the sport took another step forward as the British Crown Green Association confirmed that they are going to rejoin the BDA. This will now mean that all 3 national governing bodies are working alongside the Bowls Development Alliance. Bowls Scotland have confirmed a total of £6 million was awarded via the Small Business Bonus Schemes to clubs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Approximately 573 clubs received funding from various schemes. And Bowls Scotland have confirmed that the selected squad for the cancelled World Bowls Championships will remain the same when the event eventually takes place in September 2021. The squad is Ronnie Duncan, Derek Oliver, Darren Burnett, Paul Foster, Alec Marshall, Stacey McDougall, Kay Moran, Lauren Bailey-White, Dee Hogan and Claire Anderson, with Jason and Carla Banks as the travelling reserves. And news from Ireland. Affectionately known as the Hulk, Neil Mulholland has decided to retire from elite bowls. Neil is the only player out of Ireland to have won medals at the Commonwealth Games, World Bowls, Atlantic Rim and Champion of Champions singles. Neil will still be available for the international team. And as the indoor season approaches, the EIBA have been busy bees as they have issued version 5 of their guide to a return to indoor bowls. They've also penciled in dates for the national competitions. The singles and pairs will get underway in mid-October, the triples and fours January 2021, with the county and club events also starting in January 2021. With the finals set for April 2021. Plans to play off the 2019 National Championships have also been put in place. Fingers crossed they will be played during November. And now it's a trip down memory lane. We go back to 1988, the Outdoor World Championship singles final between David Bryant and Willie Wood. It was the days of 25 up, it was 22 apiece. They've gone off for an hour and a half's rain break. Cue the commentary.
Bryant going for the shot bowl. Gone. He's got it again and he's got both the Scottish bowls out. David Bryant is the new champion of the world. What a shot. What a result. David Bryant has won the championship of the world for the 3rd time.
I'd done everything right and I finished up with no balls on the green. David Bryant didn't even know he had won. He drove all my balls just went off the green. An incredible shot. More lucky than accuracy, I would say, but That's the way the game goes.
And I decided that as I had 2 bowls left, I would drive at the bowls, and if I dipped underneath, I'd get the jack. So I drove at the bowls, and I took the 2 of them off the green, and my own bowl stayed on. So Willie has got 1 bowl on the green, and I've actually got the shot. Not a very good shot, nothing anywhere near the jack. So Willie draws the shot with his last bowl, but he bowls it just short of the jack again. And I look at it and I think, well, if I drive this wood out, I get the shot. If I go underneath and I hit the jack, I might get 3. So I drove it, and I hit it again, and I drove it through onto his other bowl. That took his other bowl out, and my own bowl, and his bowl stopped. And my own bowl followed through, hit his bowl again, and hit it off the green. He didn't have a wood on the green. And I had 3 woods on the green, and that was it.
And now we return to the second part of our David Bryant tribute.
He was, for the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, the number 1 choice. And 1990 Commonwealth Games, he was the number 1 choice for singles. He wasn't allowed to play in 82. Think about that for a moment. Why was he not allowed to play in 1982 at the Commonwealth Games or in 1986? Even though he commentated on the 82 one.
Because he was a professional.
Exactly. And that to me said so much, because that said he is the first true professional bowler, because he wasn't allowed to play, and we were all there. Everybody else was there. Bellis was there. Willie Wood was there. All the other guys were there. David's father was there, won a gold medal in the pairs as well, David Gurley Sr. So we were all there. Came to 86, the Edinburgh Commonwealth Games, and none of us were there because we weren't allowed to play. Because the 86 Commonwealth Games was really weird for bowls. And again, David missed out on 82 and 86. Who's to say he wouldn't have won medals there as well? He probably would have.
Guaranteed, yeah.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah. And then they didn't see, but he was still coming back into 1990. He was still England's number 1 for the Commonwealth Games singles. That's a remarkable history.
Yeah.
It really is. That's a stunning history. That to be able to go through the 80s without playing at Commonwealth Games level because of being banned effectively, that he was able to still hold that number 1 position to 1990. That to me says everything about the man and the standard he was playing at. There's that argument that you're better, because I think the thing is that whilst David, did everything, won all those titles, and you've won, a couple of dozen of them in terms of world titles and stuff in various ways, but what he did do was he was the first. He was the first truly professional sportsman in bowls. After that, as time went on, we all tried to become very professional. And if you look at the way the vast majority of the guys go into tournaments now, doesn't matter what it is, but I'm not saying all of them, because some of them do frequent the sherbets maybe a wee bit too much on occasions. But if they're going into a big match the next day, they don't. And they are professional. And they put the work in. They look right. You don't see them going out scuffy or anything else. They look right. They look professional. And they bring that attitude in. You're competing against a whole lot of people that are doing the same thing then. David wasn't. In many ways, David was playing against great players. But it had to be somewhere like Australia with the likes of John Snell and people like that who were very professional down there. And in those days, they had some great Robbie Dobbins and a whole host of other people that were very professional. But the vast majority of players, even at international level, it was 3 or 4 days away. That's what it was. That's not the case anymore. Alex has to face up to the professional players for the last 20 years, the same way as Paul and Nicky and all the rest of the guys do, and Stuart and everything else. And you have to bear in mind that the likes of Stuart Anderson, he's still in his 20s, isn't he, Alex? He's still young. So
he's only half my age.
Well, exactly. He's coming through, and he's already won the world singles twice indoors.
Yeah.
And a very accomplished all-round player. So
definitely.
You've got players like that, and you go out and you think to yourself, if I'm not 95% here, at least, I'm not going to compete. And you might need to be nearly 100% to win.
Yeah.
So that's what you're up against now. So if you're going to compare eras, you have to bring all of this into the mix. It's not just enough to look at titles. It's much more important to look at the era you were operating within and Absolutely. The era you're operating within now. And that's why I look at it, and that's why I assess players. And I would say some players are fantastic indoor players, but it's the all-round player to me it's the all-round player, likes of Alex, that makes you be the best at the era that you're in at that particular time.
And I just hope I can be as good as David Bryant was.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest deciding factor that I have in all sports is it's that sports person or that competitor who makes the group below want to get that bit better. And for me, in bowls in that era, I've got no doubt that everybody looked at David Bryant and said, I want to get, he is where I need to be at the top of the sport. Everybody looks at Alex, says exactly the same. I've always said this, I think in my lifetime, obviously the 25 years since I was born, we've had some unbelievable talents in all sports that you can only just look at, and if it wasn't for them, then I don't think those sports would be in the position they are now. And certainly from my point of view, and Alex hit the nail on the head at the start, he was an idol for Alex at the start. There will be a lot of people who think the same about you, Alex, and it's a constant sort of cycle of just people who have just got this something completely different about them that drives the sport on a continuous basis. And that's how I probably think of David Bryant back in the day. For all I didn't see him, he was the man who everybody talked about when I first started to play the sport. And, you know, he's still talked about to this day. And it's just such a sad thing that we've obviously lost him, but he will certainly never be forgotten.
We've had that era of David Bryant, which we're talking about and how great it was. And I was very lucky to travel the world with him on occasion and play against him many, many times. But we can respect what David Bryant has done for the sport.
He's a man that'll be sadly missed for what he done in the sport. I'm sure he kept a lot of people happy, you know, over the years with his performances around the world for England. But, you know, there was a couple of things that really got me during my career. When I got my MBE in 2007, a couple of days later, I got quite a lot of mail coming through the door, and I got a beautiful letter from David and Ruth.
Yeah.
And when I read that, you know, to get a letter from such a gentleman who's been a legend in our sport, who's been the greatest, and that's something that will stay with me, you know, for as long as I live. You know, it was a beautiful written letter, and from there on, every other year I won I was the first person to win the singles for the fourth time. And again, through the post, I got another lovely letter. And, you know, these are things that I'll always treasure and remember, you know, David Bryant for. And as well being such a gentleman, you know, on the green and the legend that he is. He's simply a man that I'll never forget during my lifetime.
It's that thought process that he did, things like that. I have a letter also from David and Ruth after UK singles, and it was just an absolute delight of a letter. It really was, you know, and in many ways it was quite uplifting because he beat me in the final, and he sent me a letter, and it took me a long time to win that title afterwards. But, you know, you sort of treasure those, and I still got it. You know, all these years later, 30 years later, I've still got that letter, and it will continue with me, obviously, sometime. But, you know, it's things like that. And I know he's written to other players as well, congratulating them or commiserating them various things. But for him to actually think about that next era of yourself, knowing that he's left his era behind.
Yeah.
You know, that to me is special, and we don't get that very much nowadays. We really don't, and I can't imagine too many sports where that actually happens. So I think from a bowler's perspective, we're probably all coming from the same era. And while I banter about, you know, Alex agreeing with me or David agreeing with me or whatever, because I can be occasionally controversial, but the reality is we've still got sport at our hearts. You know, that's what the game's about. We still love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be involved in it.
Absolutely.
We'd walk away. And even when Alex slides away at some stage, God knows when, 10, 20 years or whatever, he'll still be involved. You know, like he won't walk away from bowls and think, well, that's that. You know, he'll still be involved somewhere along the line. That might be coaching the kids, coming through at under 25s or international or whatever, but there still will be an involvement, because it's very hard to walk away from the sport. It gets under our skin, and it's very difficult to walk away from it. It really is.
And it could be just something as simple, Alex, as a very similar thing from yourself to an up and coming young bowler couple of words in a letter or a card could just make the difference between somebody going and, making it as a bowler or a top-class bowler or not. And, it shows the calibre of David, obviously, to still think about people after he's left the sport and to take the time to obviously send you those words. Like I say, I didn't know David, and just listen to you talk about him. It sort of just backs up everything that I ever thought about him, and the persona that he portrayed as well. But well, it's been an absolute tremendous conversation. I really have enjoyed. Like I said,
it's been an absolute blast. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Great stuff.
Thanks again, guys.
Cheers. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, David. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, guys, all the best.
Yeah, take care.
See ya.
And it's competition time. Thanks as always to Alex Marshall, who's obviously been on the show today. As today's show is focused on David Bryant, he was known as DJ Bryant. So all we want to know is, what did the J stand for? What was David Bryant's middle name? Please send your answers either by email to wrong.bias@hotmail.com, a message on Facebook Messenger, or on Twitter. Just drop us a line and your entry will go into the competition, and we will do the draw prior to the next podcast.
Right, mate, there we go. Number 22 over and dusted. Cracking chat with David and Alex. Really enjoyed it. It was good to catch the stories.
An hour and 36 minutes later, we looked at the clock and we couldn't believe the time, could we? Just absolutely flew over.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, Davy Corkill was just getting his second wind, mate.
I started to see that big key in his back starting to slow down, so I knew he was. I knew he was winding down a little bit. And the spring was starting to release.
I'm sure he had a pint of Guinness knocking around somewhere.
He's great. He's got some great stories, dude, and it's always great to have him on the show, as well as Alex. It's as always, just felt like a nice casual chat, and we ended up getting a lot of great stories out there and feeling about obviously who the show's all about. Mr. Bryant. Speaking
of Mr. Bryant, I have put a link on our Facebook page. I came across a YouTube 2.5 hour show, The Story of Bowls, presented by David Bryant, and believe it or not, it's called John Rhys Davis. And I'm sure that's Rhys Jones. I didn't know who John Rhys Davis is. But anyway, I recommend people to watch it because there's some absolutely classic clips of the great man himself, Alex Marshall, at Manchester in the Commonwealth Games, and the first time that Alex won the World Indoor Singles when he was a young-looking 31-year-old. The clips are great. And finally, we're going to, on our website, there will be a Indoor National Championship predictor. It's a bit of fun. The winner will get a 4K Fire Stick. The details will be on the website. You just click on the link, pick out the winners of the singles, pairs, triples and fours and two bowls from the men's and women's national championships that hopefully, fingers crossed, are going to take place in November. As I say, the winner will get the Fire Stick. Whoever finishes bottom will send them some merchandise. Details will be on the website. Well, that's it, mate. Looking at the time, it's 10:15 at night. You've just finished your tea.
I haven't finished it yet.
You haven't finished it yet?
It's a little bit cold compared to what it was at 7:45.
He's been going at it, folks, for 2.25 hours. It's probably the podcast.
I'm sure the chicken's come back alive.
It's probably the podcast where he spoke the least, and it's probably going to be about 90 minutes. The two of us have been sitting back lying.
Smoke. Nice to take a back seat for a change and listen to the two guys talk.
Smoking jacket and slippers on, mate. But never mind, mate. It's been a good one. Until the next time.
Great stuff. Take care, all.
Cheers, folks. And it's only fitting the great man has the final word.
The best advice is to go out and practice your delivery until every bowl you put down is delivered identically. Any variation that you have with your results can be due to things on the green, but you don't want things in your delivery varying as well, because that makes it doubly difficult. So groove your delivery so you can put one after the other down the line until it's perfect, and then it's between you and the green. We're reading the green and tackling the green.
Thank you for listening and hope you've enjoyed the show.
This has been a Dodgy production.